and welcome back to September Mindset Month. This week, I'm going to talk about patience. As we all know, patience is virtue. It's a rare virtue, and I think particularly at the moment with the COVID fatigue that people are experiencing, it's a really, really rare virtue. However, it is a really important skill, ability, capacity to have if you're in mediation. The reason is that I think almost everybody in mediation almost is guaranteed at some stage in the process to feel a high level of frustration. And that could be frustration usually with the other party, with the other party's legal advisors, with themselves, with their own legal advisors, with the mediator. Undoubtedly, people feel frustrated with us, with the process itself, with documentation, with the information, with the proposals that are being made, with the lack of acceptance of their proposals. There are a myriad of things that people can feel frustrated about in mediation. And if you don't have patience, one of the challenges is that I see people get distracted by the frustration, that in fact, they almost lose sight of the fact that this is not going on forever. This is a process that you are going through. It's part of the transition of separation and divorce, that this is not the future state, and that this is a means to an end. So whilst I would say be prepared that mediation can feel frustrating, different ways for different people, it's a means to an end. And the end is that you get to move on with your life, that you put in place arrangements that you can live with, that you're comfortable with. And that's an end that's worth getting to. That still, even now, with all of the changes that courts have tried to make, mediation is still probably the easiest, most efficient, and still most cost-effective way to put arrangements in place between parties who are separating and divorcing. So if this is the best technology we have, and it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, it's worth focusing on trying to make it work. So that's why patience is such an important mindset, that there are lots of benefits to patience. Let me check my list. That if we're patient, we are more likely to be able to listen. We're more likely to be effective at communicating. We're less likely to get disturbed, disrupted, distracted, definitely distracted by the things that are happening, maybe coming across the table from the other side. That if we are frustrated, our cortisol levels will be elevated, our blood pressure will be elevated. We lose the ability to focus on what is important, even the things that are important to us, because now we're thinking about, well, how am I going to go back to that? How do I make them feel as bad as I feel now? And that distraction can really, it can cost time in a mediation, but it can also cost results. And that I've seen people who were so irritated, inflamed by their frustrations about, well, it's taking them too long to do this, or they're drip feeding me information, that they don't have the capacity to stay in the game. And one of the challenges is that because mediation is a process, it can be slow, and it can certainly feel slow for people who are ready to move on. And that is one of the challenges. But what I would say is that if you can come in with a mindset of patience, so know what your triggers are, know that the other person who no longer has your best interests at heart probably does have the ability to know where all of these buttons are and to use them. Yeah. So know where the triggers are, know it's coming, be able to breathe through that, to prepare for that. Think about, how do I get myself in the best place to be patient? What do I need to do the night before, that morning, to prepare, to make sure that I can really do this for myself? And I think it's also about remembering this is about focus. This is not about scoring points. I mean, sometimes in mediation, people will say to me, well, you need to see these photos or this WhatsApp or this video so that you can see what a terrible person they are. But the problem is, A, that doesn't happen in mediation. We don't come up with a scorecard at the end and say, well, this is the good person and this is the bad person. We just don't do it. And so that frustration at not being able to have that, I think is a real challenge. But what I would say is that patience gives you a chance, to work with the process, to let the process start working. That one of the things that I do see is that people make a small shift that's positive, and then for whatever reason, life or maybe the other person isn't in the same place, they go back a step. So an example of this could be that we put in place some interim arrangements around children's matters. How are we going to manage the arrangements for the children while we are working on our final arrangements, getting everything in place? And so people might agree, well, this is what we're going to do around timing. And if I'm late, then I'll call you. Or if I need to change things, I'll give you 24 hours notice, whatever it is. And for whatever reason, the other person doesn't comply with that. Maybe they only give you 20 hours notice, or they don't call when they're running late until you call them. And I see people lose hope, lose faith in the process. And actually, it's a blip, and we all have blips, and we all have bad days. And so it's keeping some hope from last week, but also having patience with both of you, with yourself and with the other person, to get an idea of how does this process work. Because one thing I'm constantly reminded of when I sit in mediation is that pretty much no one else in the room has ever been in a mediation before. And it's interesting because I've had a couple of cases recently who maybe mediated a couple of years ago. They've got their arrangements in place and they're coming back to do a review. Those people actually have mediation practice because they've done it once. They put their arrangements in place. And now when they come back, there is more of a sense of, well, I know how this works. I know that we're going to have to talk about it. I know that we're going to get an agenda together. I know that there'll be different options that we talk about. And I think it really does help, that it makes it easier if you know where the process is going. So if it is your first time and you don't know where the process is going, think about, how can I give myself the best possible chance for success? And one of those is patience. So I'm sorry, it's not a more an easier message to digest. But I guess what I would say is that patience is like oxygen, that without it, the mediation won't work. But with patience, with that added oxygen, people can find a way to breathe, to move through the process, and to get things done. So, top tip for this week: practice some patience. I will try and do that myself this weekend. And I hope to see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.